Ta walked quietly through the forest. His feet made almost no sound on the soft ground. The moon was bright tonight, lighting his path between the tall trees. He had been hunting since he was a boy, learning from his father and grandfather in these same woods. The night was cool and clear. Ta stopped and looked up at the stars. Something strange caught his eye. 3 bright lights moved across the sky. They were not planes or shooting stars. They moved too slowly, too perfectly. The lights stopped and stayed in place, glowing brighter than before. "What are those?" Ta whispered to himself. He watched the lights for almost an hour. Then they suddenly shot upward and disappeared. Ta felt uneasy. He picked up his hunting gear and headed back to his village. The next morning, Ta woke to loud voices outside his small house. People were gathering around Mr. Kim's television shop. Ta joined the crowd and saw what everyone was looking at. On every screen, the same image showed: a massive ship floating above Seoul. It was like nothing anyone had ever seen. The ship was dark gray with glowing blue lights around its edges. It was as big as 10 football fields. "They're everywhere," Mr. Kim said, his voice shaking. "New York, London, Beijing, Moscow, all the big cities." The regular program was interrupted by a news broadcast. A reporter spoke quickly, trying to stay calm. The ships appeared over 30 major cities at dawn. World leaders are asking for calm. The military has been called in but has been told not to attack. We're waiting for some kind of contact from the visitors. Just then, all the screens went blank. When they came back on, a strange face filled them. The being had pale blue skin, large black eyes, and no visible nose. When it spoke, its thin mouth barely moved, but everyone heard the words clearly in their own language. "People of Earth, we are the Vox. We have watched your world for many years. Your planet has much potential, but your societies are primitive and violent. We have come to guide you, to uplift you. Your resources will serve a greater purpose under our direction. Your leaders will answer to us. This is not a request. This is how things will be." The message played again and again on every channel, on every device across the world. By afternoon, world leaders had gathered for an emergency meeting. They sent a message back to the ships, saying Earth would not surrender to invaders. The Vox response came 3 hours later. From their ships, they fired bright blue beams at government buildings in Washington, Moscow, and Beijing. The buildings were completely destroyed, but nothing around them was damaged. It was a precise demonstration of power. That night, more beams struck military bases around the world. No country's weapons could reach the Vox ships. Their technology was too advanced. 3 days later, with major militaries crippled and governments in chaos, world leaders met again. This time, they agreed to the Vox demands. Earth had surrendered. Ta watched it all from his village. When officials came to collect all weapons, including his hunting rifle, he handed it over. But he kept his bow and hunting knife hidden in a hollow tree in the forest. "They may control the cities," he told himself, "but they don't know these woods like I do." In the weeks that followed, Vox ships landed and their soldiers appeared. They were taller than humans, with the same blue skin as their leader. They moved stiffly but purposefully. They began building strange structures and setting up mining operations. New rules were announced: curfews, work assignments, resource collection quotas. Humans were to report any resistance immediately. 5 years passed this way. Ta was assigned to work as a forester, cutting trees for the Vox. It was hard work, but it kept him in the forests he knew so well. Every day, he watched the aliens. Every night, he practiced his hunting skills in secret. And he waited for his chance. Ta walked quietly through the forest. His feet made almost no sound on the soft ground. The moon was bright tonight, lighting his path between the tall trees. He had been hunting since he was a boy, learning from his father and grandfather in these same woods. The night was cool and clear. Ta stopped and looked up at the stars. Something strange caught his eye. 3 bright lights moved across the sky. They were not planes or shooting stars. They moved too slowly, too perfectly. The lights stopped and stayed in place, glowing brighter than before. "What are those?" Ta whispered to himself. He watched the lights for almost an hour. Then they suddenly shot upward and disappeared. Ta felt uneasy. He picked up his hunting gear and headed back to his village. The next morning, Tai woke to loud voices outside his small house. People were gathering around Mr. Kim's television shop. Tai joined the crowd and saw what everyone was looking at. On every screen, the same image showed: a massive ship floating above Seoul. It was like nothing anyone had ever seen. The ship was dark gray with glowing blue lights around its edges. It was as big as 10 football fields. "They're everywhere," Mr. Kim said, his voice shaking. "New York, London, Beijing, Moscow. All the big cities." The regular program was interrupted by a news broadcast. A reporter spoke quickly, trying to stay calm. "The ships appeared over 30 major cities at dawn. World leaders are asking for calm. The military has been called in but has been told not to attack. We're waiting for some kind of contact from the visitors." Just then, all the screens went blank. When they came back on, a strange face filled them. The being had pale blue skin, large black eyes, and no visible nose. When it spoke, its thin mouth barely moved, but everyone heard the words clearly in their own language. "People of Earth, we are the Vox. We have watched your world for many years. Your planet has much potential, but your societies are primitive and violent. We have come to guide you, to uplift you. Your resources will serve a greater purpose under our direction. Your leaders will answer to us. This is not a request. This is how things will be." The message played again and again on every channel, on every device across the world. By afternoon, world leaders had gathered for an emergency meeting. They sent a message back to the ships, saying Earth would not surrender to invaders. The Vox response came 3 hours later. From their ships, they fired bright blue beams at government buildings in Washington, Moscow, and Beijing. The buildings were completely destroyed, but nothing around them was damaged. It was a precise demonstration of power. That night, more beams struck military bases around the world. No country's weapons could reach the Vox ships. Their technology was too advanced. 3 days later, with major militaries crippled and governments in chaos, world leaders met again. This time, they agreed to the Vox demands. Earth had surrendered. Ta watched it all from his village. When officials came to collect all weapons, including his hunting rifle, he handed it over. But he kept his bow and hunting knife hidden in a hollow tree in the forest. "They may control the cities," he told himself, "but they don't know these woods like I do." In the weeks that followed, Vox ships landed and their soldiers appeared. They were taller than humans, with the same blue skin as their leader. They moved stiffly but purposefully. They began building strange structures and setting up mining operations. New rules were announced: curfews, work assignments, resource collection quotas. Humans were to report any resistance immediately. 5 years passed this way. Tai was assigned to work as a forester, cutting trees for the Vox. It was hard work, but it kept him in the forests he knew so well. Every day he watched the aliens. Every night he practiced his hunting skills in secret, and he waited for his chance. Tai and Jin traveled for 3 days. They moved only at night, hiding during the day. They avoided roads and towns where Vox patrols might spot them. On the 3rd night, they climbed high into the mountains. The air grew cold, and the path became steep. "Almost there," Jin said, pointing to a narrow path between 2 large rocks. They squeezed through the opening and followed a winding trail. Soon, Tai saw small fires ahead. As they got closer, he could make out tents and simple wooden shelters hidden under the trees. People moved quietly around the camp, their faces serious but determined. A tall man approached them. "Jin," he greeted her with a nod. "This is the hunter. Yes, this is Tai, Jin replied. Tai, meet Sung. He's our expert trapper. Sung shook Ta's hand firmly. Good. We need more people who know the land. Ta looked around the camp. About 30 people were there, cleaning weapons, preparing food, or talking in small groups. They didn't have fancy guns like the Vox, but they had bows, spears, and some old human weapons. Jin showed Ta to a small tent. Rest tonight. Tomorrow you'll meet everyone. The next morning, Tai woke early. A woman was teaching a group how to move silently through different types of ground. Rocks, leaves, mud. That's Ha. Sung told Tai as they ate a simple breakfast. She was a wilderness survival instructor before the invasion. Now she teaches us how to move without being detected by Vox scanners. Later, Jin gathered everyone in the center of the camp. She introduced Ta to the group, then brought forward the other leaders. You've met Sung and Ha, she said. And this is Yuna. A small woman with short black hair nodded at Ta. Jin explained that Yuna had been an engineer who worked on military technology before the Vox came. Now she studied Vox equipment that the Resistance managed to capture. We all bring different skills, Jin told the group. But we share one goal, to take back our planet. Over the next few weeks, Ta trained with the Resistance. He taught others how to track and hunt without making noise. Some showed him how to set traps that could catch even the careful Vox patrols. He taught everyone how to survive in the wild, finding food and shelter where the Vox wouldn't look. Yuna spent her time in a small cave that served as her workshop. One evening, she called the leaders together to show them what she had learned. The Vox rely too much on their scanning technology, she explained, holding up pieces of a broken Vox helmet. They can see far away with these, but they have poor awareness of what's right next to them. She demonstrated how Vox soldiers had excellent forward vision, but couldn't see well to their sides without turning their whole bodies. Their armor is strong against frontal attacks, Yuna continued, but weaker at the joints and back. They expect attacks from the front, because that's how they fight. Jin added what she had learned from translating Vox messages. They don't understand why they struggle in our forests and mountains. On their world, environments don't change much. They never learn to adapt quickly. The group began planning small attacks on Vox patrols. They would test the aliens' weaknesses, learn their patterns, and slowly build their strength. We start small, Jin told them. We learn what works. We spread the word to other resistance groups. And when we're ready, we strike harder. Tai felt hope for the first time in years. The Vox were strong, but they didn't understand Earth or its people. They didn't know what it meant to be a hunter, to adapt, to wait patiently, to know your prey better than it knows itself. The next day, they prepared for their first mission. A small Vox patrol would pass through a narrow valley. The Resistance would be waiting. Remember, Jin told them before they left camp, we are not just fighting for ourselves. We are fighting for all humans, for Earth, for our future. Tai checked his bow and the knife at his belt. The hunt was beginning. But this time, the hunters were the prey. The first mission was a success. The Resistance group watched the Vox patrol from hidden spots in the trees. They didn't attack but learned how the aliens moved and communicated. For 2 weeks, they studied different Vox patrols, noting patterns and weaknesses. One night, Jin called Tai, Sung, Ha, and Yuna to a meeting. It's time we capture a Vox soldier, she said. We need to learn more about their equipment. The others looked surprised. No resistance group had ever captured a Vox soldier alive. How? He asked. They self-destruct if they think they'll be captured. Jin smiled. They do, if they have time to activate the system. Yuna has a plan. Yuna spread a map on the ground. There's a small Vox patrol that passes through this valley every 3rd day. Just 2 soldiers. If we can separate them and hit one with a shock trap, we might disable their systems before they can react. Sung nodded slowly. I can build a trap that will deliver a strong electrical shock. enough to disable, but not kill. They planned carefully for 5 days. Sung and He prepared the trap in a narrow part of the path. Ta would lead one Vox soldier away while the others captured the second one. On the day of the mission, everyone took their positions before dawn. Ta's heart beat fast as he waited in a tree above the path. Hours passed. Finally, he heard the heavy footsteps of Vox soldiers. When the 2 blue-skinned aliens reached the right spot, Ta made a bird call. Sung activated the trap. A net made of conductive wire fell on one Vox soldier. Before it could react, a strong electrical current ran through the net. The alien fell, its systems temporarily disabled. The second Vox turned, raising its weapon. Tai jumped down from his tree, landing behind the alien. He made a loud noise and ran. As he hoped, the Vox followed him, leaving its fallen partner behind. Tad led the Vox on a long chase through difficult terrain. The alien moved clumsily over fallen logs and through thick bushes. Finally, Tai circled back toward the camp by a different route, losing the Vox in the process. When he returned to camp, he found the others in Yuna's workshop. On a table lay the captured Vox, still unconscious but securely tied. "We did it," Jin said, her eyes bright with excitement. "Now we can learn their secrets." For 3 days, Yuna studied the Vox soldier and its equipment. She carefully took apart its armor, helmet, and weapons. The alien was kept unconscious with herbs he prepared. On the 4th day, Yuna gathered everyone to share what she had learned. "Their armor is advanced, but it has weaknesses," she explained. "The joints are vulnerable, and their helmets have blind spots. They can't see well to the sides or behind without turning." She showed them how the Vox communication system worked. They depend completely on signals from their command ships. These signals pass through relay stations placed around Earth. Jin studied the alien's language patterns from its communication device. "They're frustrated by Earth's environments," she told the group. "They call our forests and mountains chaotic and unpredictable. They can't understand why their standard tactics don't work here." The most important discovery came when Jin decoded messages about the Vox command structure. "The main ship controls all Vox forces through the relay network," she explained. "If we could disrupt these relays, the Vox units would lose coordination. They would be confused, maybe even helpless for a while." Tai thought about this. "Like animals that lose their leader," he said. "They become disorganized, make mistakes." "Exactly," Jin agreed. "Their strength is their technology and organization. Without it, they're just individual soldiers on a planet they don't understand." The group decided to release the Vox soldier far from camp, its memory of the capture erased by the shock. But they kept its equipment for Yuna to study further. That night, as they sat around a small fire, Todd felt something he hadn't felt in years: hope. The Vox weren't invincible. They had weaknesses. And now, the Resistance knew what they were. "We've been studying them like hunters study prey," Ta said quietly. "Now it's time to set a bigger trap." For 2 months, the Resistance planned their first big attack. They chose a Vox mining facility in the mountains. It was far from major Vox bases, but important for collecting rare metals the aliens needed. "This facility has 20 guards," Jin explained as they gathered around a map. "They have a regular patrol schedule and rely on motion sensors in these areas." She pointed to the main paths leading to the facility. Yuna had built devices that could fool Vox sensors. "These will make the sensors think nothing is moving, even when we are," she said. The plan was simple but required perfect timing. Sung would set traps to disable Vox vehicles. He would lead a team to create distractions. Todd would guide the main attack group through the forest using hunting paths no Vox would know about. The night before the attack, Todd couldn't sleep. He thought about all the years under Vox rule, all the humans who had suffered. Tomorrow could change everything, or end in disaster. They moved out before dawn. 40 Resistance fighters split into 3 groups. Tai led his team through thick forest, avoiding all main paths. They wore clothes colored with natural dyes that helped them blend with the trees. They moved silently, just as they did when hunting deer or wild boar. When they reached their position, Ta gave the signal, 3 short bird calls. In the distance, he heard his team begin their distraction. Loud noises and small fires drew Vox guards to the north side of the facility. At the same moment, Sung activated his traps. The ground beneath 2 Vox transport vehicles collapsed, and nets made of strong vines wrapped around their engines. "Now," Ta whispered. His team moved forward, staying low. Yuna's devices kept the sensors quiet. The few guards left at the south entrance never saw them coming. Tay's bow made no sound as he fired. His arrow hit a Vox guard at the weak point in its neck armor. The alien fell silently. Beside him, other hunters took down 3 more guards the same way. They entered the facility quickly, moving from shadow to shadow. Inside, they found 5 more guards. The fight was short but intense. 2 resistance fighters were injured, but all the Vox were defeated. "Plant the charges," Tai ordered. Yuna's team set explosives at key points in the facility: power generators, computer systems, and storage areas. They had just finished when Tai heard heavy footsteps. "Reinforcements coming," someone shouted. "Everyone out now," Ta called. They ran for the exit, but found it blocked by incoming Vox soldiers. "This way," Ta said, leading them to a side door. They burst outside, only to find themselves trapped between the facility wall and a steep cliff. The Vox approached slowly, weapons raised. Ta looked around desperately. There seemed to be no escape. Then he saw it, a narrow path down the cliff face, almost invisible, unless you knew what to look for. As a hunter, Ta had used such hidden trails many times. "Follow me, single file," he said. "Step exactly where I step." One by one, they slipped onto the narrow path. The Vox reached the edge, but stopped, unwilling to risk the dangerous descent. Instead, they fired their weapons, but the angle was bad, and most shots missed. When they reached the bottom of the cliff, Ta gave the signal. Yuna pressed a button on her remote device. Behind them, the facility erupted in a series of explosions. The mountain shook, and smoke filled the sky. "We did it," Jin said, her voice filled with wonder. "We actually did it." As they made their way back to camp, news of their success spread through hidden resistance networks. It was the first major victory against the Vox since the invasion. That night, there was quiet celebration in the camp. No loud music or bright fires that might attract attention, just the shared joy of finally striking back. "This is just the beginning," Jin told the group. "Today we showed that humans can fight back, that we can win." Ta looked at the faces around him. Tired but proud, nervous but determined. For 5 years, the Vox had seemed unbeatable. But today had proved what Tai had always believed, that the skills humans had developed over thousands of years on Earth were stronger than alien technology. "The hunt has begun," he said simply. "And now, we are the hunters." Word of the successful attack spread quickly. It traveled through whispers in villages, coded messages on radio, and secret marks left on trees and walls. Humans everywhere heard that the Vox could be beaten. 2 weeks after destroying the mining facility, Jin brought news to the camp. "Other resistance groups want to meet us," she said. "They want to learn how we defeated the Vox." Tai and the others were excited but careful. "It could be a trap," Ho warned. "I don't think so," Jin replied. "These groups have been fighting small battles for years, but they've never won anything big like we did." They agreed to meet representatives from 3 other resistance groups. The meeting place was a cave system deep in the mountains, far from Vox patrols. On the day of the meeting, Tai, Jin, and Yuna arrived early to check for traps or Vox spies. The cave was safe. Soon, people from other groups arrived, 10 in total. "I'm Quan," said a man with burn scars on his arms. "My group fights in the eastern forests. This is Da from the river valleys, and Min from the southern coast. Ta looked at them carefully. They were tough, smart fighters who had survived years of Vox rule. But their eyes showed the same thing. They were tired of just surviving. They wanted to win. Jin explained how they had studied Vox weaknesses. Yuna showed them the technology she had developed to counter Vox sensors. Ta described how they used hunting skills to move unseen and attack effectively. The key is to use what we know about our land, Ta said. The Vox don't understand Earth's environments. They can't adapt quickly to different terrains like we can. The other groups shared their own knowledge. Quan's people had learned to use fire in ways that confused Vox heat sensors. Day's river fighters could move through water without detection. Min's coastal group had discovered that salt water damaged Vox equipment over time. We all have different skills based on where we live, Jin realized. If we work together and share what we know, we can fight the Vox in every environment on Earth. They spent 3 days planning and teaching each other. They created a communication network using old human technology that the Vox ignored. Each group would return to their area and train others, spreading hunter-fighter skills across the country. As the meeting ended, disturbing news arrived. A young messenger ran into the cave, breathing hard. "The Vox are getting worse," he gasped. After the mining facility was destroyed, they punished 3 villages. They took all food and made people work double shifts. Many died. Everyone was quiet. Ta felt the weight of responsibility. Their victory had cost innocent people. "We need to hit them harder," Quan said angrily. "Make them fear us." "No," Tai replied. "That's not the way of the hunter. A good hunter is patient, strategic. We need to grow stronger first." Jin nodded. Tai is right, and we have another problem. I intercepted a Vox message yesterday. They're calling for reinforcements from their homeworld. This news shocked everyone. More Vox would make their fight much harder. "How long do we have?" Dai asked. The message said the reinforcements would arrive in 8 months. Jin answered. "We need to be ready before then." As the other groups prepared to leave, Ta spoke to them one last time. "Take what you've learned here and train others. Focus on your local environment. Use its unique features against the Vox. Remember, they think the same way everywhere they go. We adapt. That's our strength." In the weeks that followed, resistance activities increased across the country. Small Vox patrols disappeared in forests. Supply lines were disrupted in mountain passes. Communication devices failed near rivers and coasts. The Vox responded with more troops and stricter rules, but they couldn't be everywhere at once. For every patrol that found resistance fighters, 3 more were ambushed by hunters they never saw coming. 2 months after the meeting, Jin received messages from other countries. Resistance groups were forming worldwide, using the same tactics. Desert trackers in Africa, jungle hunters in South America, Arctic trappers in the north. "It's happening," she told Ta one night. "Humans everywhere are fighting back, using the knowledge they've always had." Ta nodded. The Vox thought they conquered us. They didn't realize they woke a planet of hunters. 6 months had passed since the first big victory. Resistance groups now fought the Vox around the world, but time was running out. The Vox reinforcements would arrive in less than 2 months. Jin received a message on the old radio she had fixed. "All regional leaders are called to meet. Location: White Mountain. Time: next full moon." Ta had never heard of White Mountain. Jin explained it was a code name for a hidden meeting place in the highest mountains. Leaders from resistance groups worldwide would gather there to plan a coordinated attack. "We need to leave tomorrow," Jin said. "It's a long journey." Ta, Jin, and Yuna traveled for 10 days. They crossed forests, hills, and finally climbed high into snow-covered mountains. Guards hidden among the rocks stopped them and checked special marks Jin carried to prove who they were. Finally, they entered a large cave system, heated by natural hot springs. Inside, Tai saw people from all over the world. Some had dark skin and wore desert clothes. Others were wrapped in thick furs from cold northern lands. There were jungle fighters with painted faces and island people with shell decorations. I never imagined so many, Todd whispered to Jin. An older woman with white hair stood up. Everyone grew quiet. I am Neri, she said. Before the Vox came, I was a general. Now I coordinate between resistance groups. We have gathered here because we have one chance to defeat the Vox before their reinforcements arrive. Maps were spread on large tables. Neri pointed to 12 red marks around the world. These are the main Vox relay stations. They connect all Vox forces to their command ship. Our scouts and spies have confirmed that without these relays, Vox units become confused and disorganized. The plan she described was bold. Resistance groups would attack all 12 relay stations at the same time. While the Vox were confused, a small team would infiltrate the main command ship orbiting Earth. If we can control or destroy the command ship, Neri explained, we can prevent the reinforcements from landing. But the attacks must be perfectly coordinated. If even one relay station remains operational, the plan will fail. People argued about the plan. Some thought it was too risky. Others believed it was their only hope. Tai stood up. The room grew quiet again. I was just a hunter before the Vox came, he said simply. I know that when you hunt large, dangerous prey, you must be smart and work together. One hunter alone will fail, but many hunters, working as one, can bring down even the strongest animal. He walked to the map and pointed to different regions. Each of us knows our home territory better than the Vox ever will. Desert hunters know how to use sand and sun. Jungle fighters understand the trees and vines. Mountain people know the high passes and hidden caves. Arctic hunters can use ice and snow. Todd looked around the room. We don't need to fight the same way. We need to fight in the ways we know best, all at the same time. The Vox can't adapt to one environment, let alone all of Earth's environments at once. People nodded and began to talk excitedly. Neri smiled at Tai and continued the planning. Each region would attack their nearest relay station using local knowledge and skills. Teams would train for 1 month, then move into position. Yuna and other engineers created special devices that would signal when all teams were ready. Before the meeting ended, Neri asked for volunteers for the most dangerous mission, infiltrating the Vox command ship. Jin stepped forward. I know Vox language and ship layouts from my translation work. Yuna joined her. I can disable their systems once we're aboard. Tai also volunteered. A hunter's skills work in any environment, even a Vox ship. As they prepared to leave the meeting, Ta looked at the diverse group of resistance fighters. They came from different lands, spoke different languages, and had different skills. But they shared one thing. They all knew how to survive on Earth, their home planet. The Vox think technology makes them superior, Ta said to Jin as they left the cave. They don't understand that our connection to Earth is stronger than any weapon they have. Jin nodded. 1 month from today, they'll learn that lesson. Across the world, resistance groups began final preparations for the biggest hunt in human history. The day of the attack arrived. Ta woke before sunrise and prepared his weapons. He carried his hunting bow, several knives, and some of Yuna's special devices. Jin and Yuna checked their own equipment. None of them spoke much. They all knew what was at stake. Around the world, resistance fighters moved into position near Vox relay stations. Desert fighters buried themselves in sand near a station in Africa. Jungle hunters climbed high into trees in South America. Arctic teams created hiding spots in snowbanks near a northern relay. In Korea, Ta led 30 fighters through mountain forests toward the main Asian relay station. They wore clothes that matched the colors of trees and rocks. They moved silently, the way hunters had moved for thousands of years. By noon, they reached a ridge overlooking the relay station. Vox guards patrolled the area. Tall metal towers sent signals to the command ship above. Everyone in position. Tai asked through a small radio Yuna had made. Ready, came the responses. Tai checked the time. 1 hour until the global attack begins. He turned to Sung, who would lead the ground team. Remember, keep them busy for as long as possible. Sung nodded. We'll give you the time you need. Tai, Jin, and Yuna would not participate in the relay station attack. Their job was to reach a small Vox transport ship kept at the station. They would use it to reach the command ship in orbit. At exactly 2:00 p.m., Ta gave the signal. All around the world, at the same moment, resistance fighters attacked Vox relay stations. In Korea, Sung's team created distractions on the north side of the compound. They used Yuna's devices to fool Vox sensors, making it seem like a large force was attacking from that direction. Most of the guards ran to defend that side. Tai, Jin, and Yuna slipped in from the south. 2 Vox guards spotted them. Tai's arrow hit one in the neck joint of its armor. Jin disabled the second with a shock device Yuna had built. They ran toward the landing pad where the transport ship waited. Suddenly, a large group of Vox soldiers appeared, blocking their path. "We can't fight that many," Jin whispered. Just then, they heard loud shouting. Had led a second team directly at the Vox group, drawing their attention. "Go," he yelled to Ta. "We'll hold them." Ta hesitated, but Jin pulled him toward the ship. "We have to keep moving. This is what we planned." They reached the ship and climbed inside. Jin had studied Vox ship controls during her time as a translator. She started the engines while Yuna connected her devices to the ship's computer. As they lifted off, Ta looked down. The battle below was fierce. He saw Sung leading one group against Vox reinforcements. Then he spotted Ha, surrounded by aliens. She fought bravely but fell beneath their weapons. "Ah," Ta whispered. "I see," Jin said quietly. "She died giving us this chance. We can't waste it." The ship rose higher. On the communication system, they heard reports from around the world. Most relay stations were under attack. Some had already fallen. Others were holding out. "It's working," Yuna said, checking her equipment. "The Vox network is breaking down. Their units can't coordinate." The ship reached orbit. Ahead of them, the massive Vox command ship floated against the blackness of space. It was huge, like a metal city in the sky. "How do we get in?" Tai asked. Jin pointed to a small opening. "Service entrance. They won't expect an attack from their own transport." They approached slowly, looking like a regular Vox ship returning to base. Yuna sent fake identification code she had stolen. The doors opened, allowing them inside. The inside of the command ship was cold and strange. Metal corridors stretched in all directions. Lights pulsed along the walls. Ta felt lost, but Jin seemed to know where to go. "This way," she whispered. "The main control room is 3 levels up." They moved carefully, hiding whenever Vox crew members passed by. The aliens seemed confused, talking rapidly about lost connections to ground forces. "They don't know what's happening," Jin said. "The relay network is failing." When they reached the door to the control room, 5 Vox guards stood in their way. Ta looked at his friends. They had come too far to turn back. "Remember," he said quietly, "hunt like you know how." Then he stepped forward to face the final challenge. Ta looked at the 5 Vox guards blocking their way to the control room. He touched his bow, but knew there wasn't enough space to use it effectively. Jin and Yuna waited behind him, ready to act. "We need a distraction," Ta whispered. Yuna nodded and took a small device from her pocket. She slid it across the floor, away from the door. When it hit the wall, it made a loud bang and released smoke. The guards turned toward the noise. Ta moved fast, the way he did when hunting quick animals. He reached the first guard before it could turn back. His knife found the weak spot in its neck armor. Jin used her shock device on 2 more guards. Yuna threw small magnetic discs that stuck to the armor of the remaining guards. The discs released electrical pulses that disabled their equipment. In less than a minute, all 5 guards were down. Ta felt no joy in the victory, only determination to finish their mission. Jin worked quickly on the door controls. I can get us in, but they'll know we're coming. It doesn't matter now, Ta said. We've come too far to stop. The door slid open. Inside was a large round room with screens covering the walls. In the center stood a group of Vox, including one taller than the others. Its armor was more elaborate, with glowing blue patterns. The Vox leader, Jin whispered. Alarms sounded as they entered. The Vox leader turned to face them. It spoke in its strange language, but a device translated its words. Humans, you surprise us. Our reports said you were primitive, unorganized. You never understood us, Tai replied, stepping forward. You never tried to know this planet or its people. The screens around the room showed battles at relay stations around the world. Most had fallen to the resistance. The Vox network was breaking down. On one screen, Ta saw some leading fighters at the Asian relay. They had won, but many had died. Yuna moved to a control panel. I can shut down their systems from here. Stop the reinforcements from landing. The Vox leader made a quick movement. Guards raised their weapons. You will stop, the leader said, or we will destroy your cities one by one. You don't have that power anymore, Jin told it. Your network is down. Your forces are cut off from each other. The Vox leader was quiet for a moment. Then it did something unexpected. It removed its helmet, revealing its blue face and large black eyes. Why do you fight so hard for this chaotic planet? It asked. It is inefficient, unpredictable. It's our home, Ta said simply. We have lived here for thousands of years. We've learned to adapt to every environment. That's what you never understood about humans. We change. We adjust. We survive. Jin stepped forward. We don't want to destroy your people, but we won't let you rule ours. The Vox leader looked at the screens showing battles around the world. Humans using different skills in different environments. Desert fighters using sandstorms as cover. Jungle warriors swinging through trees. Arctic hunters emerging from snowbanks. Your species is unusual, the leader finally said. In all our conquests, we have never met one so adaptable. Yuna had finished working at the control panel. I've locked out their weapon systems, and I've sent a message to their reinforcement fleet. They think Earth is too dangerous to approach. The Vox leader made a sound like a sigh. What do you want, humans? Leave Earth, Ta said. Go back to your world. Let us live on ours. After long negotiations, the Vox agreed to withdraw. It would take months for all their forces to leave, but the process began that day. The resistance would monitor their departure. 6 months later, Tai stood on a hillside watching the last Vox ships rise into the sky. Jin and Yuna stood beside him. The ships grew smaller until they were just points of light, then disappeared. Do you think they'll come back? Yuna asked. Ta shook his head. I don't think so. They learned something important about humans, something they didn't expect. Jin smiled. That we're hunters at heart. That we'll never stop fighting for our home. In the years that followed, humans rebuilt their world. But they didn't forget the lessons of the war. Tai established a global hunter academy. People from all environments came to learn and share their skills. They studied tracking, survival, and adaptation, the ancient knowledge that had saved humanity. The academy's main building had a simple motto carved above its doors. The Earth is our home. We are its hunters. Every year, students and teachers gathered to remember those who had fallen. Some, Ha, and countless others who had fought to free Earth. They told their stories around fires under the stars, passing on the legacy of the battle that changed everything.